Hello and welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Levi with Mailbox Money. Today's guest is Thomas Johnson. Tom is a healthcare leader with Avera Health as the Vice President of Diagnostic and Therapeutic Services, including pharmacy, laboratory, and imaging operations, making sure patients get the care they need. Tom, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks, Levi. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course, filling in our listeners a little bit of background. I know Tom through our wife's work together in pharmacy, in fact, and so I don't know what Emily's been there now 6 or so years.
Yeah, pretty close. I think she would have, well, let's see. Did she graduate in 2020, right?
Yeah,
Because,
yeah,
yeah,
because we had the weird graduation
yep.
go on where we ended up just doing a for the party a parade of cars coming by the house, congratulating her. So
Yep, yep.
very happy to leave that in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, no kidding. I think a couple of her classmates took their graduation pictures in our yard. They were, so, yeah.
Very funny.
Yep.
Well, Tom, for our listeners, would you mind giving them some of your personal background, where you grew up, how you got into what you're doing, anything that you think is prevalent there, sir?
Sounds good. The older I get, the longer this story gets, I guess. So it used to be a lot shorter, way back when, like 5 years ago. I was now it's a couple of lifetimes ago, it feels like. But uh, I grew up in Brainerd, Minnesota. I am a proud Gen Xer, so I graduated from high school in '92. I grew up on a
Very
dairy
nice.
farm and then went to North Dakota State University and graduated there in '97 with my PharmD degree, and then did my residency in Bismarck, North Dakota, which was a co-funded position between St. Alexis Medical Center and North Dakota State University. So I did a little bit of teaching and completed my residency in acute care there.
Very good.
Then came to South Dakota State as faculty with SDSU and started there in '98. Worked in the ICU as a co-funded faculty with Avera and SDSU between '98 and about 2011.
Were
And
there, I actually have a question on that.
yeah,
Was Avera already involved with SDSU at that, or was that kind of the start of that relationship?
no, the co-funded positions have been around since the '80s.
Okay, wow. I didn't
Yeah,
realize
and
it had been that long.
yeah, so those faculty positions, um, SDSU and the various health systems have had some form of co-funded faculty positions. Yeah, 40 plus years. I think
Okay.
early '80s were the first faculty members in those positions.
Cool. All right. Sorry to cut you off on you
Oh
where you're
no,
going.
that's totally fine. Stop me anytime. I'll just keep going, I guess. So, uh, but let's see. So about 2011, then I moved over to being director of hospital pharmacy. So that's when I transitioned from a primary clinical faculty role to an administrative role.
Okay.
Um, and then director of hospital pharmacy here at McKinnon till 2015, assistant vice president for hospital pharmacy, which added the rest of the system reporting. So my responsibilities expanded then.
Very nice.
2022 then changed my title to a couple of retirements and changes of some other people. And 2022, I started working with the lab and added that to my vice president role. And then in spring of 25, added imaging services, and that's where my current title comes from. So vice president of diagnostic and therapeutic services. So then that covers hospital pharmacy for the system, laboratory services, mostly at McKinnon, but also some system work, and then imaging services at Avera McKinnon. So
Very nice.
that's been my job and my training and whole thing. So if you want to talk about dairy farming, we can do that. If you want to talk about being a faculty, we can do that. If you want to talk about my favorite football team, we can do that, although that doesn't go over very well in South Dakota.
No,
Uh,
no, no, it
yep,
does not.
we can talk about whatever you want, Levi.
Well, now your favorite football team, they're leaving us in the dust, huh? The
We are,
transition over to the FBS.
yeah, we're planning some trips to some various road games right now. So, yeah.
I believe it. That'll be fun. It will be very cool to see them actually compete against those teams because I've had the feeling that they can and they will for quite a long time now.
I think it'll be fun. The first year or two might be rough, but we'll work through it. So
Yes, sir. Well, yeah, let's get into, you said dairy farming, and how does a guy dairy farming decide that he wants to go get into the medical field?
yeah, that good question. I I loved growing up on a dairy farm. It was a great place to grow up. I also watched my parents work really hard and do a lot of physical labor. And if you go back in time, the late 80s and all of the 80s were not a good time for farming in general. um, it really just got to the early 90s where there was no way to keep going with the operation that they had. So you just couldn't milk 20 cows and even get the milk truck to come get milk from you anymore. And so they got out of it as soon as I went to college. But there was never really a plan for me to take over
Or that?
the operation. It just wasn't big enough to really support, and we could all see that. And so that it wasn't really a conversation. They usually would discourage me from doing chores and encourage me to do academics. So that's
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 funny.
how I got into it. I'd always talked about something in the medical profession. I don't know why. It seemed like something to do. Maybe my parents put a bug in my ear. I don't know. And then landed in pharmacy. I think I almost went to med school. I was really close to doing that. Not going into college. I had a plan to be a pharmacist. That's what I was going to do. And then I got into my fourth year and my later years of pharmacy school and my residency training, and I thought very hard about going to med school and going that path. Um, Chose not to. I don't necessarily regret it. It would have been an alternative path.
Yeah.
Uh, but my career has been very good to me and to our family, so I have no complaints, and have done a lot of stuff within pharmacy, and that's been good for me too. So yeah.
Where did the teaching side of things come into it? Did you know, did that just stumble on you? Someone threw something at you, said, "Yeah, why not?" Or did you know that was something you wanted to do?
Uh, I think I came to that as I got later into my pharmacy career. I didn't set off to do that. I don't even think I knew you could do that when I started it. So it that's one of those things that you kind of learn as you go, and what jobs are out there and what kind of things you can do. And then I learned that, oh, yeah, that'd be all right. And I guess I looking back on it, I probably always enjoyed working with people and teaching people how to do things, and
Hmm.
being in front of a group certainly never bothered me. So yeah, my grandmother was a teacher, so maybe there's some genetics to it somewhere along the line. She was a fifth and sixth grade teacher and was a principal of a grade school, so maybe that's where I got it. I don't know.
Oh boy, I can only imagine doing it. College students are fit it's a little bit of different there.
Yeah, right.
Awesome. And then let's kind of get into your transition from being a pharmacist into, more leadership, more operational role. Is that walk us through that journey?
Yeah, I held on to my clinical practice as long as I felt like I could. So it was probably 2015. I was still working in the ICU when I could find the time to do it. 2, 3 days a month was where what I could usually get in. It was about 2015. I didn't spend as much time there, but I did still continue to work with the residents all the way, and was a program director for our critical care residency program through 2018 or so. So I spent quite a bit of time still doing that. Um, but yeah, it was time for me to do something a little different. I've been pretty blessed that I've had the same phone number since 1998, but I've
Yeah.
done a lot of different jobs by being in this same spot. So that's been good. I think maintaining that that clinical practice and a foothold in the profession was very helpful for me and continues to be helpful. So as I'm having different conversations with people, I still look at it with a clinical mindset, and that person that's doing that work and taking care of those patients, that influences decisions that I get to be a part of as a leader. So
Did you, when you were working in pharmacy, did you always wish that your leadership kind of had that kind of background, or maybe they did, and that's where you learned it from? Because, like you said, it is very nice knowing, walking in that shoes, knowing what that person wishes their leaders were doing, and coming back, reversing that role.
yeah, that's a good thought. I did have a lot of leaders that had a clinical background. And of course, somebody is always the boss at some point that doesn't do what you do, and that's totally fine. But there were some of those folks that really just didn't understand it at all, and I got to observe that and the frustration that maybe goes with that. And then the other side of that, having people that are really good at that, but then sometimes they're too far into the weeds of it. And so I try to balance that of the people doing the work don't necessarily want the vice president to come help them every
Yeah,
day, but at the same time, they want them to know what's going on. And so there is a balance there that you have to try to find, which is not always that easy. So,
speaking of not being easy, what are some of kind of the biggest challenges that you're seeing hospitals face right now?
uh, yeah, there's a lot of them. Funding and how funding happens in this country for healthcare, hospitals sort of and health systems now, because we don't just provide inpatient care like it used to be. It's sort of
Yep,
the whole gamut, and you come to hospitals for a lot of different things. And so the funding of that is interesting at best, challenging and almost impossible at worst. And so those are the kinds of things that we work through. It's variable. It goes up and down. It depends a lot on government policies. It depends a lot on supply chain issues. It depends a lot on expenses for various products that you really can't do anything about. It's so there's a lot of things that aren't in your control. So you have to work on the things that are in your control.
very
Um,
nice.
and that's where we try to spend most of our time on the things that we can influence as opposed to the things we can't.
Very good. All that is, yeah, kind of in the background, what, as a patient, they're not really seeing. When you're talking about operational improvements, how do they actually translate into better care for the patients? So they're what actually affects them.
Yeah, as healthcare providers, we get a chance to see behind that curtain, so to speak, and um, we we know where the challenges are with costs and how we're trying to work through it. The goal is to try to get and to offset those costs and to always select um, the least expensive option that will deliver the result that we want.
Yeah,
And that hopefully that the patient understands what they want and why they want that result. And that's probably the biggest thing is I think medicine in general has shifted from 50 years ago. A physician would give advice, prescribe a treatment, and the patient said, okay, and you just did it. And uh, it,
not
it
so much anymore.
it can't be. I mean, it's too expensive. It's too many things that could happen, too many side effects, too many choices, too many other things. So I think healthcare providers now are more what I'd call a healthcare guide. Here's the expertise. Here's what I'd recommend. Here's what the data shows. Here's options for you. Here's the potential side effects. What are your goals? What do you want to try to get to? And there's actually a term for it. It's called shared decision making.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and that's what we're trying to do with people is, well, here's the recommendations, but you can do that. I walk my parents through those conversations quite a bit, and they're in their late 80s, And I think they picked up on some of that because they're of that generation. And well, they told me that's what I should do. And I said, well, you don't
Just
have to.
blindly. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You have options, right?
you do. If that's not what you want, you don't have to do that. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And probably some of their caregivers have gotten frustrated with me over the years, me giving that advice because
I was just gonna say on the flip side of things, with the there's people who maybe have the wrong information going. I'm sure you see and deal a lot with that, with some wrong information going into conversations, right?
there is no shortage of what's the way to say it? There's no shortage of information out there.
There.
Um, what where that came from and who's talking about it and their level of understanding is pretty questionable at times. And so the biggest thing is for people to find what is considered a reputable source of that information. It's very rarely on social media. Um,
I would agree with that
Yet that is where a lot of people get information. What I would just tell people is that social media is based on trying to get more clicks, more follows, more engagement, and that doesn't necessarily come from the best recommendations for people.
one. Yeah,
So,
yeah, 100%. Well, I got one more question for you, Tom. For someone who's early in their healthcare career who hopes to move into leadership someday, what advice would you give them?
hmm. Uh, I get asked that question quite a bit. It
I bet you do.
sometimes that depends on the day. Sometimes it depends on what I'm
Fair.
telling you. But typically, I tell people to say yes to opportunities. You just never know when the next option is going to be. You just never know when the next thing is going to happen that gives you a chance to do something. Um, and the story I tell about that was one that I learned really quick. I was a freshman in college. Uh, our NDSU women's basketball team was playing in the national championship, and on a Monday they show up, and I was playing in the band, and they show up and say, "Well, if anybody wants to go, we have the chance to get on a bus Wednesday morning, drive straight through to Boston, uh, play at the game on Friday, and then hopefully, if they win, play at the game on Saturday, and then get right back on a bus and drive straight back through to Fargo, and you can go to class Monday morning." And my first thought was, who's dumb enough to do that?
I think I see where this is going.
Yep. And I remember getting on the phone with I suppose I'd called my parents to see what was going on, and I told my mom what was going on, and she said, "Well, why wouldn't you do that?" Like, well, it's kind of a long bus ride. She's like, "Yeah, but think about the experience you're gonna get. When's the next time you get a chance to do that?" All
Fair.
right. And so that's the advice. Like that story. And I went on the trip. It was awesome. I still tell that story.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it now at my age now, but my 19-year-old body could handle that level of contortion of sitting in that bus for that long. My 50-something-year-old body can't handle that, and that's okay. Um, but it was a great experience. Like what a trip. And I think that's the same version that I've taken forward when opportunities present themselves. Don't be quick to say no because it might be hard or it might be uncomfortable or it might not be exactly what you think you want, but that that's the option. That's how you grow in your life and your career is take advantage of those opportunities.
That's amazing. That just to go to show people, you're still talking about that trip, like you said, and yeah, amazing piece of advice right there. Tom, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us, share some insights and a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. Uh, Again, thank you for your time, sir.
Oh, you're very welcome, Levi. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you guys on the next one.